You have $3 million saved, but somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a quiet question that keeps surfacing. Is that actually enough? The answer rarely gets said out loud. $3 million without a plan is just a number sitting in an account. But big numbers have a way of disappearing faster than you might expect when there's no strategy for strategically turning them into income that can hold up over time. So today, let me show you the math that catches a lot of people off guard. Before I get into it, hi, I'm David Millington, certified financial planner professional and the president of Puzzle Wealth Solutions. I've spent decades sitting across from those retirees who walked in with portfolios that they thought or should last forever. And usually within the first 30 minutes or so, we start uncovering gaps with the potential to reshape their entire retirement picture. So today, let's go through three things. One, why $3 million saved doesn't automatically buy the retirement you want. Two, what are the hidden forces that might quietly erode even the larger of nest eggs? And third, a framework for turning that $3 million into a paycheck that can hold up over time. So let's get into it. Let's dive into those three things. First, let's go through the math. Let's start with the number everyone runs in their head. $3 million, you want to spend 150 grand a year, divide that 3 million by 150, that's 20 years. Simple. You're fine for 2 decades, right? What could go wrong? There's a lot of things that could go wrong with that. First, that math assumes your money earns nothing. It assumes inflation doesn't exist. It assumes taxes never touch a withdrawal. That's a big one. Watch out for those taxes. And it assumes you never run into a bad market right when you're pulling money out of the portfolio. So in other words, it assumes a world that just doesn't exist. Here's what actually happens to many retirees. In year one, you pull that 150,000, but the market drops 15% that same year. Now your 3 million is down to 2.55 million before your next withdrawal. And then after that, you're sitting at 2.4 million. You just lost $600,000 in 12 months. And that surprises a lot of people. To get back to 3 million, your portfolio doesn't need to gain 15%. It needs to gain 25% because you're climbing back from a smaller asset base. And on top of that, you're still pulling money out every year. So that is called the sequence of returns risk. And it's one of the most significant risks a retiree can face, and they really never know it. It doesn't matter what your average return is over 30 years. What matters is the first 5 to 10. A bad sequence early can do lasting damage that good years later can simply not undo. It's too far behind the race. So section number 2, let's go through the hidden forces. Now you might be thinking, David, I'll just spend less if the market drops. It's a reasonable instinct, but much, much harder than it sounds. Your property taxes don't care about the stock market. Your Medicare premiums don't care about the stock market. Groceries, utilities, insurance, none of that pauses because your portfolio is down. The bills keep coming, whether the market cooperates or not. And that's why it's hard to cut back on expenses. And then there's the tax problem nobody usually thinks about until they've dug into it. Say most of your $3 million sits in traditional retirement accounts. Well, every single dollar you pull out is ordinary income. At 150 grand in withdrawals, you're into the 22% bracket, possibly touching 24. So that 150 grand in spending can mean pulling closer to $180,000 to $200,000 from your accounts. So that money disappears faster than maybe what your plan assumed. And there's one more. There's the widow's tax trap. I love going through this. Well, not really, but when the spouse passes, guess what? There's one less Social Security check. But a lot of those expenses keep coming. And in the years that follow, that standard deduction of a married filing jointly goes from $32,000 to $16,000 for a single filer. So in many cases, that can raise the tax burden as the household income falls. And it's not rare. Widows make up roughly 29% of all women 65 and older, about 9 million widows. So if your $3 million plan doesn't account for that transition, you're building on potential quicksand. All right, let's go through continuing inflation. That's the third force, the one working silently in the background every single day. And we all know it exists, but it's hard to kind of keep track of, and that's inflation. Most people dramatically underestimate how it compounds. At 3% a year, your purchasing power gets cut in half in about 24 years. That $150,000 you spend today would be nearly $300,000 in a little over 2 decades, just to keep the same lifestyle. Same house, same car, same groceries, double the cost. And then here's the trap. Retirees anchor to the number they retired with. You retire with $3 million, you think in terms of $3 million for the rest of your life. But $3 million in 2026 is not $3 million in 2050. We know that. It's not even close. So what is that worth in the future? If you're watching this and realizing your current plan doesn't address some of these things I'm talking about, well, you're not the exception. It's more you're the norm. This is exactly the kind of pressure testing I do with clients at Puzzle Wealth Solutions. So if you want to see what your specific numbers look like under stress, there is a link in the video description to book a time with me for an introduction. Now let's cover the framework. So what should you actually start to do? Here's the framework I use with my clients. There are 4 steps. Step 1, know your real spending number, please. Don't guess. Don't go for your hoped for number. Go with your actual documented, honest to truth numbers of what you truly spend. Most retirees guess, and guessing with a $3 million portfolio is a bad and it's an expensive habit. Step number 2, stress test for sequence risk. Run your plan through scenarios where the market drops 20% or 30% in one of the first few years. If a bad early stretch breaks your plan, you need more flexibility, or think about more conservative withdrawals in those early years. Step 3, map your tax trajectory. This is where a lot of plans also fall apart. Look at what happens to your taxes when one spouse's, God forbid, were to pass away. Look at what happens when RMDs begin. Ages 73 for most, 75 if you were born in 1960 or later. Look at what happens if tax rates change. Then build a withdrawal approach that smooths the tax burden across decades, instead of letting it spike in one of the worst possible years. And the 4th step, build a withdrawal system. Decide in advance what you'll do if the market drops. Decide what spending you can flex and what you can't. Decide which accounts you should draw from and in what order and why. You may want to take Social Security early in that time period. A system takes emotion out of the decision at the exact moment where emotions are likely running highest. So as always, I like to summarize this. Let's go through the bottom line of what this all means. $3 million, it's a lot of money. But it's not just your retirement plan. That's just a number. A plan is a strategy that turns that money into income that can stand up to bad markets, rising costs, shifting tax laws, and maybe even the loss of a spouse. Without it, $3 million is just a number that shrinks a little every year while you hope it lasts. In my experience, the retirees who sleep best aren't the ones with the biggest portfolios. They're the ones who know exactly how much they can spend, exactly where it comes from, and start to plan for what happens if something goes wrong. Be proactive. For a lot of people, that clarity is worth more than simply piling up more and more assets. If you want that kind of clarity around your own numbers, I'd like to help you build that. There is a link in the description to book a time with me directly. At Puzzle Wealth, Our team works with individuals, we work with families who want their investments, their taxes, and estate strategies coordinated under one single umbrella so that the pieces actually work together instead of pulling in different directions. So if this was useful, please do me a favor, hit that like, hit that subscribe button so these land in your feed when the next video comes out. It is the simplest way for me to help get this information out in front of more people who really do need it. As always, I greatly appreciate you watching these videos, and of course, I'll catch you in the next one.